Hello friends, it's Grace and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be going through all of the books that I read in February 2022, and for February being the shortest month of the year, I actually got quite a few books accomplished, which I am super happy about, and I'm going to go through my ratings of each one as well, but on the whole, I'm pretty sure this was a really positive reading month for me in terms of ratings, because I seem to remember my enjoyment being high, and I'm pretty sure that the lowest that I rated any of these was 3.5 stars. So I am going to go in the order that I read these books, and I will just say a little bit about them and my thoughts, and there are a few other videos that I'm going to direct you to, whether those are like dedicated reviews or what have you, if you're interested in more thoughts on these books. So the first book that I read in the month of February was How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu, and this was a late January 2022 release, and this is a really interesting book. So this is a sci-fi book, which is great because I really wanted to read more sci-fi this year, and the reason that this is so interesting is because the setup of this book, the concept that we're following, is that there is a climate plague in the near future. We start in about 2030. And there's a climate plague that is uncovered in Siberia, and it sweeps the world, and we kind of get to see like what happens to the world and how humanity deals with this. And this book spans quite a long period of time. Like, you have some of the stories that are spanning like hundreds of years from the first one. And the thing that I really like about this is that this is one novel in the sense that the storyline is interconnected, but it is set up in like a bunch of short stories, essentially, that are all just connected with each other. And they're connected through the people who are experiencing them. And each story kind of explores its own sci-fi concept. So, like, for example, one of them is exploring the idea that in the near future we might be using animals to grow compatible, like, transplant organs that will then be put into human beings, and just things like that. But it's not really the sci-fi concepts that are the strength of this book, it's the fact that they're being rooted in human emotions and human experiences, and the emotions of the people in each of the stories that we're following are really the focus. So some of them are really well done. On the whole, like, this was a 4.5 star read for me, so I really enjoyed it, but some stories were a little bit weaker than others. There were some in here that I absolutely loved, and some in here that, if they were by themselves, they might have been like a 3 star, for example. But on the whole, I really liked the way that the narrative was tied together at the end, and this is something that I would recommend really widely because I think that a lot of people would find this really interesting. Also, I forgot to mention that I buddy read How High We Go in the Dark with Ben, because my next book up, Feet of Clay by Terry Pratchett, was also a buddy read with Ben. We started off February really strong by basically just doing all of our reading together. And so Feet of Clay is the third book in the City Watch sub-series of Discworld, and because it's the third book, I'm not going to say too much about the plot. Even if I did, like, Terry Pratchett's Discworld is just so satirical and can be so absurd that, like, you don't even really need the plot. Like, you do. But the plot isn't what makes it great, it's the way Terry Pratchett does it. So this one in particular is sort of like your classic whodunit murder mystery, but it's so much more than that because it's just like buoyed up by all the social commentary that Terry Pratchett puts in here, and like his language and like his types of jokes that are like play on words, and there are some that I don't always understand because the humor is very British, so I get most of it and then I don't get all of it, but it's still so enjoyable, and I've been enjoying these so much. This was 5 stars for me. I'm really excited to continue on with the City Watch books. So next up we have Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark, which is another 5-star read for me this month. This is a novella. It's very short, so I don't want to say too much about the plot. However, I go into this a little bit more, still spoiler free, in my reading vlog where I was doing books that you can read in a day. So essentially basically, the short version of the concept for this is that we're following a few women who are monster hunters, but they are women of color, and the monsters that they're hunting are called Ku Kluxes, because there is this phenomenon where like KKK members can actually become monsters, and it's sort of like if their hatred eats them from the inside out, like if their souls are that jaded, like it kind of opens them up for these monsters to come in and take hold of them. So that's a really interesting concept, and I said in my vlog that if you think the concept sounds cool and if you think that the magic sounds cool, what you actually get in here is even cooler. And the one thing that I do want to say is that there is some body horror in here, and I enjoyed the level of horror that we were given, but I will say that if body horror is not your thing, then I would not necessarily recommend this. I didn't think that it was gratuitous, but I still think that it's like a proceed with caution type of thing. However, I really loved it. I really loved the like emotional tie-ins with the character's personal journey and the plot, and yeah, there was just so much to love. So Ring Shout was my next 5-star. Next up, part of my same reading vlog for quick reads or books that you could read in a day was Pier and Andessie by Susanna Clark, and I gave this 4 stars at the time, and I am now kind of wondering whether I should bump it up to 4.5. It is somewhere in that 4 to 4.5 star range, because the thing about this book is that I'm still thinking about it. And this is a book that I fully believe that you should go into knowing as little as possible. So even in that vlog, it is still spoiler free. I didn't say too much about it. I'm not going to say too much about it here. The very, very basic concept is that we have our main character, Pier and Andessie, and we have this labyrinth-like house that Pier and Andessie lives in. And he explores it, and it kind of just takes off from there. I truly just think the experience is better if you go into it from there. So that is it, that is all. But it was a fascinating book and I really enjoyed it, and I would highly recommend it. Next up, also part of that vlog, we have The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway, and this was sort of like a neutral read for me. I gave it 3.5 stars because I can see the value in it and why it's such an enduring story, because like it really rests on its themes. But like, and it was a quick read. It was easy to read because Ernest Hemingway's prose is easy to read and I like his prose, but it still is sort of just like it didn't blow me away. So this is the type of book where, with it being a classic, like I can enjoy it for what it is and I can like respect what it does and recognize what it does, if that makes sense. So I felt like 3.5 stars was a fair rating because like I didn't dislike it, but I didn't overly enjoy it either. So it just kind of sits in that weird middle place. But, you know, I still would recommend it if you're looking for an accessible classic, because Ernest Hemingway, in my opinion, is very much that. Okay, so next up we have another 5-star and possibly my favorite book of the month. I think, like looking at my pile, it is my favorite book of the month, and that is The Girl in the Tower by Catherine Arden. This is a sequel. This is the second book in the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden, and so I'm not going to say too much about the plot because, you know, just generally I don't like to do that, but this was such a strong continuation. Like, I loved The Bear and the Nightingale, and I've heard people say that this is the best in the series and that it's better, but I don't necessarily think it's better. I think it's just different. Like, it's good in different ways. I loved The Bear and the Nightingale and this for a lot of the same reasons, but it's doing different things. It's just that I still loved it. So I am, like, I'm so invested in this series. I do have The Winter of the Witch on my March TBR, so I'm gonna be getting to that. I know that for sure. This has just been such a great reading experience, and so far I would like highly, highly, highly recommend this. I can definitely see potential for this now being one of my favorite series of all time. So yeah, I am just really excited for the finale, not to mention how beautiful this book is. I love it. I love everything about it. So yeah, next up in February was Anxious People by Frederick Bachman, and so I do obviously have a physical copy of this. It's right here, but I actually listened to this on audiobook, and so this was a 4-star read for me. This is my first Frederick Bachman book that hasn't been 5 stars, but I will explain a little bit. So I ended up enjoying the audiobook experience. But the way that this book is set up, it's dealing with, like, Frederick Bachman is always dealing with the relationships between people and the intricacies of, like, their emotions and, like, who they are under the surface and stuff like that. So we're dealing with a bank robbery that goes wrong and becomes a hostage situation when the bank robber runs into an apartment viewing where there are obviously a bunch of people there to view an apartment. And so the story that we're experiencing is all happening afterwards, so a lot of this is told in police interviews because the police officers as characters are important as well. We're exploring their emotional journeys as well. And I was, to be quite honest, really annoyed at the start of the audiobook because the narrator, from a technical standpoint, was doing a fantastic job of distinguishing between the characters by using different voices for them, but a few of the voices that were being used for these characters were irritating me to no end, like they were driving me up the wall. And so I thought about switching to reading this physically, but then I thought, like, no, I'll give it a chance, I can get through it. And as we began to uncover more about these characters throughout the book, they became significantly, like, less annoying to me, which obviously is a very good thing, and I think, in a way, that was kind of intentional. But even though I found this really emotionally satisfying by the end, I just couldn't shake that, like, I was not having a good time at the beginning, which I think is why this was 4 stars. And I am considering rereading it in physical form later, and I might enjoy it more because, like, I did end up really enjoying the end, and, like, I enjoyed where it went and what it did. So just a little bit of mixed feelings about this one, and that's why it's 4 stars, but 4 stars is still a good rating, which, like, reflects what the book ended up doing, and I still trust Frederick Bachman, and I'm still a big fan of his. So yeah. Next up, and the second to last book that I finished in the month of February, was The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan, which was an epic fantasy debut from him, and this was an e-arc that was approved for me by Orbit Books on NetGalley. So I read this as an ebook, and this, honestly, as a debut, blew me away. I will point you to my dedicated review for this book if you would like to hear my really in-depth thoughts, but the basic premise of this book is that we follow this Emperor's Justice, Sir Conrad von Valt, as he kind of travels around the empire dispensing justice, and the justices as a position are given a really unique sort of power in that they basically are like a detective, a judge, an executioner, all wrapped into one. Like, they are the law. If they decide to, like, execute you, they can do that sort of thing. So these people are given quite a lot of power, and it sets up a really interesting discussion in this book through the, like, it is done through the plot, but we're kind of having a philosophical discussion about law and justice and every character's perspectives on what law and justice should be versus what they are, and how that ties in with your personal morals. And it does a lot of interesting things in that sense. And the plot truly is like a murder mystery, but it is so much more than that because it is also the politics of an entire empire. It is a series that I'm now excited to continue because there is the promise of a lot more and a lot wider of a storyline, and I am interested in Sir Conrad von Valt, who is the main character, but he's actually not the main perspective. We are following this story told from the perspective of his clerk, Helena, from the future. So that was a really interesting choice for me as well. I ended up liking it, and I am interested to see where her and von Valt go in the next book. Go watch my review if you're interested in my in-depth thoughts. but The Justice of Kings was 4.5 stars, and it was a really great debut. And then finally, the last book that I finished in the month of February was Each of Us a Desert by Mark Oshiro. I don't know why it's always my instinct to say Oshiru. That's not right. But this was the book club pick for the A Court of Ben and Grace Discord. Saying that name out loud always makes me laugh. But this was the book club pick, and I am so glad that I got to actually finish it by the end of the month. I really enjoyed this. This is a really unique, really interesting YA novel about our main character, Xochitl, and another girl named Amelia. And this is very, like, I think it's Mexican inspired. There's a lot of Spanish dotted throughout this. Like, it's very cool how the culture and the language is interwoven into the story here. So there were some things that I needed to look up because I didn't know what they meant. And one of them was cuentista, which is storyteller. So Xochitl, our main character, is the storyteller or the cuentista for her community. And she has basically had this role for her entire life. And there is a ritual where she can take someone's story in like a magical sense, like this is part of a magic system. And then when she takes their story, that person is unburdened from their story. And Xochitl then goes to give the story back to the land and back to Soli, or the sun, who is the god of their people. And it's a very interesting thing because it kind of causes Xochitl to be exploited and to feel all this pressure, and she doesn't feel like she has a life of her own because this is all her people need her for. And it's a very interesting start, and it's a very relatable problem where if you feel like you have pressure on you, you feel like you haven't necessarily been able to make your own life choices. So I really liked her. I found her to be a very relatable main character. And then our other character, Amelia, is the daughter of this man, Julio, who has brought this band of men to kind of take over and intimidate the residents of Xochitl's village. So they've taken over the well, and they're not allowed to have water anymore. They have to pay for it and stuff like that. So he really is kind of just like a bully, but his daughter Amelia is sort of just there to the sidelines, and Xochitl thinks that she is complicit in all of this, but she's not sure because Amelia just seems kind of cold and detached. And the story really kicks off when some initiating events happen that I won't mention, but they end up kind of going on a quest together because they both feel like they're in situations that they need to escape from. Xochitl decides to set off on a quest, and Amelia decides to follow from a distance, and things kind of continue from there. I really enjoyed the world. I really enjoyed the magic. This was, in my opinion, surprisingly dark for a YA. I kind of think that this could have been an adult novel. In my opinion, it's one of those where it's YA because the characters are young. There was no shying away from the themes that Mark Oshiro, oh my god, was going for here. But I really enjoyed that. It just felt right for the story that was being told. So I gave this 4 stars. I don't even think that I said that, but I really did enjoy it, and I would definitely recommend this. It is the rare standalone. It's not a series as far as I know, and so I think that it's a really great choice if you're looking for something like that. Okay, so those are all of the books that I read in the month of February. After going through it, I can tell that, yeah, this was a really enjoyable reading month. My ratings were pretty high, and I read some really great things. So please let me know down in the comments what you think about the books on here. What was your favorite read from the month of February? What are you most looking forward to? Do you agree with me about these books or not? And I'm looking forward to hearing from you. So please like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more content from me. I post new videos every Monday and Thursday, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!